Okay, this is the part we've promised, the uplifting note, the sense of where we're headed, the vision for the future, the protection of our families and communities. And I'd like to just take the last part of the quote that Carrie gave us from Rachel Carson, said we should look about and see what other course is open to us. We should look about and see what other course is open to us. So this is the other course, and I think we couldn't have found a better guide to sort of share the other ways of thinking about agriculture and about the future, about nurturing the land, biodiversity, protection of and nurturing the soil and all the species that we depend on for our own lives. Steve Sprinkel is somebody I've known for a really long time. Actually introduced to him by a board member of ours, Eric Kinberg, years ago, who, back in those days, we're talking the 80s, organic agriculture wasn't viewed as credible as it is today. And I think people like Steve gave organic agriculture the credibility it now deserves. And as a result, I think people are recognizing his leadership. He served as president of the board of Cornucopia, which is doing really important work in advancing organic integrity across this country. And in his own community now in Ojai, Steve is farming this beautiful farm, 14 acres, and has developed sort of a community there in Ojai around the Center for Regenerative Agriculture, in which he serves on the board. And in his own life has linked foodies or food touring with agriculturalism. So he has the farmer and the cook, and a whole bunch of other stuff he's going to tell us about. The other thing Steve is doing, which is really important in the state and nationally, is serving as president or chair, I guess, of the Ecological Farming Association, which runs Eco Farm. You're all familiar with Eco Farm. That's held every year at Asilomar. So Steve, please come on down and share your vision and sense of mission here, and we really appreciate you being here. So thanks.
Thank you for those very nice remarks. That's very kind of you. What you see on the screen now, and I won't keep on going over and over, this is an experimental drone video made by my friend John Faniff. And you may know what those white pieces of fabric are. Those are floating row covers. They provide a number of different uses. Principally, I buy those to provide frost protection. Every layer will give me 3 degrees. So if it is 25 degrees at 6 o'clock in the morning outside, underneath those row covers, nothing's been damaged because it's still 33 under there. And so one night, only one night, and they pay for themselves. Now what we're using all those fabrics for is to protect us from the birds. The birds are probably the worst thing on that farm. Sparrows and finches, they are much worse than any gopher, ground squirrel, anything else you can imagine. No bug ever matches these birds. And so we work back and forth with them because they're also a beneficial creature. So I don't want them to murder all of my chard and all my kale and my spinach. And so we leave areas up. So you saw those areas that were all in flower. We leave those areas up for them to live in. But then when we finally had it with them, we take the mower on the tractor and knock it all down. So this slideshow, I'm not going to refer to it. It's just a collage of people and food. And I apologize because it's late and people are probably hungry and you're going to be looking at a lot of pictures of strawberries and watermelon. I hope this guy can be quiet soon. Of course, I give thanks because It is an unexpected honor to be asked to speak to you when you have been some of the most dependable allies of organic farmers for many years. I prepared all these remarks because it's better if I'm prepared. I'm really great at ad-libbing and wandering far afield, so it's best to keep on target and on time. So that's why I'm reading. I'll try to make it as interesting as I can. You are our friend, not merely because our sales go up commensurate to the additional people we horrify because of toxic agricultural chemicals. That is as crass as it is obvious. The truth is that I have true empathy for my conventional fellow farmers, plodding along on that treadmill of chemical lies. And don't think that only just a few of them are fed up with it. They just don't know how to step off. For one thing, the bank won't let them because organic farming is too risky to bankroll or insure. They're coming along, though, not in unmanageable swarms, but nearly all of the biggest vegetable and fruit growers in California have devoted significant acreage to what they once scorned. Some might say the big boys have taken away my market, but it was never mine to begin with. They invented mainstream organic, and certainly Kroger and Walmart are places I neither enter through the front door nor the back. I should note that many of you have your cars parked on asphalt that may have come from one of the manufacturing plants formerly owned by my family. You may have landed on a runway and taxied over to disembark at LAX or John Wayne or Ontario Airport on blacktop proudly laid down by my father or grandfather, uncle, or cousins. You may have traveled on macadam that my great-grandfather rolled out when he began covering the treacherous mud of LA County at the close of the 19th century. Those boys could make the rain drain into the gutter, let me tell you. But why this story? What an odd anecdote. Where is he going with this? Mine is an awkward tale of youth gone wrong. For in truth, I wandered far from my corporate family havens, softly singing that old hippie standard, Big Yellow Taxi, now 50 years old, that goes, hey, farmer, farmer, hey, farmer, farmer, put away that DDT now. And then, as you remember, Joni ended by singing, you'll pave paradise and put up a parking lot. And thank you. And that false baritone she employs at the end sounded just like my grandfather. Thus I was whisked away from untold millions in capital and hundreds of thousands of tons of smoking black aggregate by the siren song of nature. Joni Mitchell, you've not been given all the credit you're due. Oh, Daddy, says I want to be a poet, an artist. I want to live on the land in the country. I can't rip out the orange groves. Yes, it's true. I talk to trees, and they talk to me, and they still do. Then they said, stay. It's good here. You can be safe here. If you're hungry, go open up that sunny glade there and plant some zucchini. But stay away from our roots. We don't like steel. There. See that man with all that manure in his lot? He has a problem because he owns too much manure. He will let you have it for free. He may even bring it to you, but don't use too much. It will kill your zucchini if you use too much. I said, okay. These conversations took place shortly after I had visited my friends Jimmy and Beth, who were gardening with the renowned Alan Chadwick on a hillside below Merrill College at the University of California at Santa Cruz. One moment in the thrilling company of such sunny nymphs caring for the nearly vertical flower garden, and there was very little chance I would go back to overseeing a paving crew on US 395 in Temecula. Mr. Chadwick, the master gardener whose persona can be not fully described merely as charismatic when messianic, might be a little closer to the truth, is responsible not just for me taking the floral path where it forks sharply to the left, leading today to this lectern, but a host of other gardening farmers who in turn have launched the careers of a generation of more gardening farmers, and now there are 3 generations of them. Without Chadwick, should one wonder if we would enjoy a Center for Agroecology at UC Santa Cruz where you can get a BA in organic farming? And without Chadwick, would we still have in Santa Cruz California Certified Organic Farmers or the Organic Farming Research Foundation and the Ecological Farming Association, of which I am apparently the incoming board president, unless Bernie Sanders decides to make a late run for this position? I am tempted to describe the various twists and turns before I went to my first eco-farm, which is the yearly conference that the Ecological Farming Association hosts every winter in Monterey for around 1,800 eager farmers. I am tempted, but it would be folly to yield to it. The twists are abrupt, and the turns sometimes run in circles. Suffice it then to reveal that I have farmed gardens in 20 localities, from Hawaii to Bolivia to Texas, frequently on various parcels. I only owned one of them. I never was evicted from any of them, and I have only had one lease. I'm sort of a handshake gardening farmer. Perhaps by making the gardens appealing, the plants themselves make it difficult for landowners to get rid of me. This was true at least once. In 1973, I was pretending to attend the College of Creative Studies at the University of California at Santa Barbara on the coastal bluffs of Isla Vista. I began gardening on a large vacant lot right across the street from where Aldous Huxley allegedly wrote the novel Island while staring at Santa Cruz Island beyond the channel. I started gardening on the center, which you may agree is usually a good place to start. Before too long, I had dug everything up from one street to the next and planted it all with flowers and zucchini. One day I was admiring the toil with my girlfriend when a silver Buick four-door rolled up to a stop and a smartly dressed woman emerged. "I'll bet she's the owner," says I. I crossed the garden to meet her as she approached. "Is this your land?" I asked. "Yes, it is," she said brightly. "I hope it's okay what we've done with it." "Well, under the circumstances, it's fine what you've done. I came up to see if I had to hire someone to cut down the weeds, but you seem to have it well in hand." "Thank you. Stay as long as you like," she said, rather pleased with her bargain. Then she got in her Buick and rolled back to Pasadena. I really don't know if she was from Pasadena. I knew people like her from Pasadena who were reasonable, so that has been her home for as long as I've told this story. 8 years and 22,000 miles later, I was back in Isla Vista, still pretending to obtain a degree in literature from the College of Creative Studies. And such places, of course, are designed for people like me. I was then farming a garden on a large abandoned parcel behind a private daycare center. The owners were thrilled that I would keep the weeds down for free and give the children some flowers to look at out the window. I don't remember being asked to pay for all the water I was using, and there was no rent. People can be so kind. Eventually, I had too much produce, even for the Isla Vista Food Co-op. I should reveal here that this circumstance is one reason why we are all here today in Irvine. The organic farming movement started when a lot of organic gardeners accidentally became farmers and went looking for someone to either share it with or sell it to. Nature gets out of hand. An abundance of zucchini can be such a burden, as many of you zucchini growers in the audience know firsthand. So the inception of an alternative to food, grown without chemicals, was fostered by amateurs allied with nature, who gifted them with careers in the great outdoors. The commerce which led to this movement was accidental, but the results are so incredible, one could think it was foreordained. I know it's risky to say something like that, but some people should still be able to get away with it. Now, back to the zucchini. I was married at the time of the Great Zucchini Avalanche, which would be 1983, to a smart woman named Ruth Hoffman, whose father Cecil was a Presbyterian minister in Pasadena, of course, who had helped start the farmers market phenomenon. Cecil also was an early supporter of Cesar Chavez, but let's not wander too far afield. Ruth Hoffman, who really was attending the College of Creative Studies in order to achieve a degree in literature, observed all our suddenly overwhelming garden produce and said, "Why don't you go to the farmer's market in Santa Barbara?" I confess I had never heard of a farmer's market, but I liked the sound of it right off. How would I get there? On the bus, she countered gamely. You see, we had no cars. So like a Guatemalan or Palestinian farmer, I loaded some boxes full of zucchini and carrots into the local bus and took them down one Saturday to the farmer's market. No table, just 3 or 4 boxes. I didn't even have change for the transactions. But the nice people there were very patient with me. I obviously was very new to capitalism, and they could see I must be earnest. Without a table or a cash box, that's not earnest, that's desperation. I made $46. 3 years later, I had a truck and a cash box, and I was the president of the Santa Barbara Farmers Market Association. By 1986, I was gardening on a farm in Carpinteria and averaging $4,000 every Wednesday at the Santa Monica Farmers Market. I had 4 vendors in aprons. I had tables and 4 cash boxes. We made all the Persian women lined up like 3rd graders and take their turn. It was madness. This isn't Tehran, Yasmin. So you and Vashti got to behave. Eventually, Yasmin and Vashti started policing the line for me, and things were cool. The Persians liked their fresh vegetables. They even smuggled in seeds of their favorite exotic crops for me. This would be a good time to mention the Mexicans. It's a different language. Yo tengo mucha experiencia con el mexicano. I have a lot of experience with Mexicans. Tanto que puedo decir que yo fui empleado por ellos. Enough to even say that I've been employed by them. Casi nunca he sido el patrón. I've almost never been the boss. They are what they say in your country, take charge types. Miguel Torres first came here in 1944 to pick cucumbers in Michigan during World War II because all the Johnnies were at war. He started working for me when he broke his arm falling out of an avocado tree. He was bored, so he started weeding with one hand. One day, years later, I told Miguel I was looking for a new crop to grow. I'd hit the wall. I was already growing a lot of exotic stuff like Romano beans and dill and radicchio, but I had the urge to ask him, "Why don't you plant some cilantro?" Cilantro? You gotta be kidding, Miguel. They're bringing that stuff over the border for 10 cents a bunch. How am I gonna make a profit on that? Well, you asked me, and I told you, plant cilantro. He kind of went off in a huff. I had a hard time even finding cilantro seed. It was that hard to find. 1983, or whenever it was, 83, 84. I planted about 600 linear feet of it. And those Mexicans fell on that stuff like blackbirds. They never weeded arugula or basil as well as they manicured that cilantro. 40 days later, Miguel said we should cut the cilantro. How many bunches? Try 40, I said. In Santa Monica that afternoon, true bedlam broke out when the smell of the first cilantro to hit that market began carrying through the ranks of my Persian clientele. Big, fresh cilantro. Gishniz, they call it. Gishniz! You have the gishniz. Gishniz, he has the gishniz. Give 5, no 10. How many do you have? 40? What? 40? Go back and get more. Turns out that Miguel Torres and Angel Perea had slyly picked 200 bunches without telling me. I kept opening boxes of cilantro, and it was like something out of the Arabian Nights. I had made the acquaintance of an Egyptian doctor who enjoyed coming down to the market and watching the madness because he said it reminded him of home. This was a good timing with the cilantro, he said. I guess so. I can't wait to get back and plant some more. No, it's not that. You haven't seen the front page of the LA Times food section today. I will be back. When he returned, I had no problem understanding what he had meant. The word cilantro was the headline written in 90-point type across the entire page. No one else would have cilantro in Santa Monica for nearly 2 months. I owned it. This would be a good time to describe a few practices on these market gardens designed by Alan Chadwick and all those who followed him, like John Jevons and Jim Nelson and Beth Benjamin, who were my first teachers. Generally speaking, these gardens, even when large, protect themselves inherently. All of this first cilantro crop of Miguel's did not make it to market. It went to seed rather quickly, and I was planning to till it down until Everett Dietrich came by swinging his bug net. Hey there, you're growing some coriander. That's great news. Best beneficial insect habitat around. Everett Dietrich was one of the early pioneers in beneficial insect promotion, rearing and dispersal. Rincon Vitova, owned now by his daughter Jan and son-in-law Ron Whitehurst, continued that tradition and have amplified the message. They're here today. I didn't know that either. I didn't know Ron was going to be here, But that was a real big deal to have Everett tell us about beneficial insect habitats. He used to come out and use our farm as one of his experimental staging areas and to do his bug counts because we didn't use any chemicals. See, he liked that. The point here to drive home is that the early organic farmers grew diverse crops as if they were gardens. They served farmers markets well with the abundant selection and the direct marketing movement by offering chefs and stores 10 or 15 different things to buy up in one trip, including crops from diverse families like parsley and cilantro from the umbels, tomato and eggplant from the solanum, and cucumbers and zucchini from the cucurbita. We were founded on polyculture, and that practice was at one time expected of us. The authorizing legislation for the organic food movement, the Organic Food Production Act of 1990, was written in 1989 and 1990, and the farms that they wrote the law for were farms like mine. And so farms like mine are codified in federal law. It was only later that we turned our back on that. Those things were expected of us. This inspired plan folds well into crop succession and crop rotation, so you are ideally never tempted to follow your leek crop with your onions because you can plant potatoes or parsley or corn or butternut squash there instead. This is how organic farming is supposed to work, preventatively. The same rampant, intentional insanity eventually achieves seed production, which is what we would humbly submit is the apogee or highest level of garden farming. The cilantro crop therefore serves three purposes. It is food, it also feeds bees, and it is habitat for lacewings, ladybugs, and tachinid wasps, and probably many more minute helpers drawn to the flowers. In the end, it yields in seed probably half the value of what the original food crop produced. This seed-to-seed process is what we used to define as sustainability until Monsanto selfishly so overwhelmed the term with paradox that it is now rendered nearly useless, permanently without value. At this point, it would be a good time to decide whether to talk about the bad stuff or the good stuff. No lack of bad stuff to talk about with Scott Pruitt and Sonny Perdue rolling back the clock for us. So let's talk some more about the plants and the beautiful people that take care of them. My handshake landlord in Carpinteria, biodynamic farmer Steve Moore, once went in 1983 to a farm conference in Pacific Grove called Eco Farm. He returned raving about it. Oh, you have to go next year. You'll love it. January 1984 rolled around soon enough, and Steve and I went to the Eco Farm. There's never been so much magic to behold as at the Eco Farm. I was awestruck to walk among and listen to many successful organic farmers, mostly from Northern California, who openly shared all their insights and visions. I was somewhat aware of these gods because I had been reusing their produce boxes with their names and labels on them that I retrieved in Santa Barbara when I made deliveries there. Now they walk before me. Full Belly Farm, Be Wise Farm, Route 1 Farm, Jerry Thomas, T&D Willie, Grant Bryans, Warren Weber, Drew Rivers, and Paul Mueller. Oh my God. Presiding over the seed-eager faces of the Silomar was the founding high potentate and organic seer, Amigo Catasano, whose bonhomie was infectious, his optimism sublime. Once the three-day event was over, I couldn't wait to be home and plant and to make more compost. Even when I lived in Texas, I would sojourn back to the Silomar to spark up anew. It is the organic mecca for believers. You must imagine the interplanetary ecstasy, the charge of overseeing the eco-farm must bring me now. I still feel rather incidental while serving this august community, and that may be for the best because this work won't succeed if I don't stay low to the ground. I promised I'd be sunny, but I must confess, the organic farming movement faces unimagined challenges now that we've gone mainstream. Running with the big dogs hasn't turned out to be too much fun. Big dog barks a lot. He's always hungry, and he bites. I know about these challenges because long ago, I accidentally turned into an organic wonk. A wonk is defined as a person who takes an excessive interest in minor details of political policy. Back in the day, which was 1984, a few of us were certified organic farmers. We really didn't have to be certified organic back then, but the meaning and process of certification built community for organic practitioners. We gathered around campfires and talked about tomato varieties and drank beer and ate casseroles and salad. We all got certified, and then we would hang our big CCUF certification logos in our farmers market stands as proof that our claims were legit. Some people were making claims that might not have been so legit. So certification became a voluntary means of helping consumers make an informed decision. Some farmers were offended that our system implied that the non-certified farmers were lying. But the certification was for consumers, not us. They had to take it or leave it. However, the camaraderie and personal improvement available through these associations was fundamental to my sense of self. When our local organic leaders, Harlan and Jim Meyer, moved to Washington State to farm for Cascadian, everybody thought I should replace them, even though I was convinced I was unfit. Really, everybody else was too smart to say yes. I was one of the last people to qualify for certification in the South Coast chapter, and now I was going to steer the ship. We frequently end up doing what is required. I served on the statewide committees. I went to meetings from Indio to Arcata. I became a part-time, mostly pro bono certification inspector. My wonk was born. I was never predisposed to science, rules, and process. My previous training had focused mainly on the literary achievements of Jack Kerouac and small-scale cannabis production. Now I had to pronounce words only Nobel laureates could spell. Then I started performing the big wonk. I really didn't get legitimately wonky until I went to Texas. I moved to Texas because I could afford to buy a farm there and because Jim Hightower was in charge of the state agricultural department. Texas in 1990, you may remember, was being auctioned off after that year's real estate scandal. My motives were not wonky per se, but I rather naively thought that government would buffer the prospect of conflict of interest. If there until now has been anything to laugh at in this presentation, that last sentence should have been one of the best lines. I rather naively thought the government would buffer the prospect of conflict of interest. Oh boy. How did all my organic farm gardens come to be? Where's perhaps a better question? What's the plan? Nature. I did not come from agriculture, so I didn't know any better. I swear, I started with a shovel. I always garden in glades or on hillsides surrounded by wilderness or in safe neighborhoods. So isolation seems to have been a guiding principle. But I have been lucky. Every parcel I've been offered has had no conventional farming anywhere near it. Every parcel has been served by exquisite water, either coming out of the ground or running in a creek through the wilderness or piped in from storage tanks filled with drinking water. These were the organic farms I grew up with and owned. Many organic farmers of my generation have selected farm property that holds these same environmental benefits. It was purely a matter of safety. I wouldn't want to live near farms where aircraft were applying pesticides. When conventional agriculture began to make the organic transition in the late 1980s, we in policy wanted contamination prevention that was believable, probable, obvious. I am sorry that that has not generally been adopted. What's practical defeated what's ideal. I think you and I deserve the alternative. Yet I still think and I know that organic produce is authentically clean. I know measures to protect organic production from drift are in place, monitored and measured. Conventional pesticide applications are now rigorously permitted. You will be fined if you spray when the wind velocity exceeds what's allowed. But is a fine sufficient? On the other hand, and to be completely contrary, without large-scale organic transition, we do not measurably reduce the chemical burden carried by humans, wildlife, and our mutual environment, including water serving people hundreds of miles away from where the chemicals are being used. We're only halfway there, and though we have made lovely improvements, this has been a long journey. One summer day in 1996, a copy of a modest newsprint magazine called The Organic Organizer came to the house without request. That was the day I got another fire lit under me. Cooperation in the National Organic Farm Community, EcoFarm, from coast to coast. The chief mastermind behind the Organic Farmers Marketing Association was Eric Kinberg, who Jay mentioned earlier. Eric Kinberg, a bear hunting, tractor welding, back to the organic lander who had moved his family from Homer, Alaska to Bass, Arkansas so his kids could go to good schools. He chose Bass because it was the last eastern valley in the Ozarks that had electrification. He liked being out there, as they say. From Bass all the way to the Boot Hill, Missouri on the Mississippi River, all is darkness. Take a look at it sometime. On the south side of the Missouri border in Arkansas. Because of Eric, I became a student of the Organic Foods Production Act of 1990, the federal law that empowers the National Organic Program at the USDA, which is now giving most of us fits. Eric promoted gypsy caravans of believers who would in the 1990s roll from state to state to attend the first meetings of the National Organic Standards Board. We testified and networked. I first met Jay Feldman at one of these hopeful meetings that soon enough became nightmares. We testified about crop rotations and growing cilantro for seed and beneficial insect habitat. The authoring legislation, the OFPA, is really a remarkable document. I've since learned it is possible to pretend that Congress makes laws while the governed feel free to ignore what's intended. Between meetings with Eric and Sissy Bowman, our organizer from Indiana, I inspected 200 farms in the Midwest for a variety of agencies. I did mushrooms in limestone caverns in Indiana, dairy cattle in Iowa, soybeans and corn in Nebraska, and chickens in Minnesota. You are served by a fantastic population of dedicated, ethical, organic farmers. There are thousands and thousands of small farmers all throughout the Midwest doing good things. I learned so much from them, and I was inspired in my work to carry their message. For many years, I'd been enamored of the content and style of Charles Walters, who had been publishing Acres USA since the 1990s. I wrote an article for Acres about organic wine, which the editors liked well enough to give me a monthly column in which I called Transitions. I wrote 3,000 words a month for 10 years, and they published it all. This calling proved to be providential for my work with Kinberg and other stalwarts like Sissy, because the articles usually reported on the promulgation of the National Organic Program. We used the platform to inspire farmers to participate in the national dialogue on organic farming. From this linkage, I encountered the man who is always right about organic policy, Mark Castell, but seems thoroughly ignored by people in power the more right he is. In time, I joined the board of directors of Cornucopia and then served for 3 years as its president. Now, more or less briefly to end. As you can see from those slides that we showed, the food business is kind of fun, and it's filled with a lot of really happy people. And all the pictures of people that you saw up there wasn't anyone, and when that picture was taken of them, who were over 30 years old. And so there's this new group of farmers and food activists that's arising without really much impulse or recruitment going on. They're just coming right out of the ground like mushrooms. We've been farming in the Ojai Valley on 4 parcels for 17 years, just not at the same time. 600 feet of cilantro is just now setting seed. There are so many ladybug larvae attached to the outer leaves of the lettuce that we have to whittle the heads down. The larvae stick to the vegetables. Have you ever seen the larva? The ladybug larva? Well, there's ladybugs, right? They're great, but they're not doing much. The important thing is the larva, which is a very kind of like unseemly and kind of almost ugly insect. It looks like a very tiny Gila monster with a really big tail. It's got three sets of legs. It's got 6 true legs. It just walks around and it eats its body weight every day. That's what you want. So that's why you have to have habitat for the ladybugs. It's not the ladybug, but the red ladybug. It's its larva. And so when they're done, after eating, after about 3 weeks, they walk around and then they stick on whatever is handy, like a lettuce leaf or a piece of field pipe or a shovel. And like sometimes there's so many of them that you can't even harvest the vegetables. There's so many, maybe that's kind of a problem. But so you cut the leaves off and you lay the leaves down. Yeah, boy, yeah, you'll never learn. Okay, so there's so many ladybugs. My wife, Olivia Chase, supervises the, are you here, Miss Chase? Supervises the, oh, thank you. There she is right there. Supervises the cafe, bakery, and grocery we own called The Farmer and the Cook. It is an all-organic, vegetarian, evolvingly near vegan store that has 46 employees. The farm has 4, including myself. We do not have time or wakefulness available here tonight to describe the labyrinthine commerce of the store. The key feature is waste. There's very little. We have strived to keep it fresh by maintaining high standards of fresh so that the people eat it all before it can go bad. But you must be brutal at first and throw away your embarrassments. From the farm, everything finds a home. We pride ourselves, probably a little too much, on selling our off-grade cucumbers for $9 a pound on the salad bar when they're all cut up, while selling the number 1 cucumbers for $2 on the produce case. This same canny ritual is applied to tomatoes that are fine for salsa but will find complaint at point of purchase. A good way to measure the store is by the weight of the weekly consumption of salad, 400 to 500 pounds, and the number of daily transactions, usually around 600. Our customers live next door and find us on the internet from Toronto to Tokyo. This is a miracle that anyone can replicate in their own commercial neighborhood, because ours was at less than 50% occupancy when we began, and now El Roblar Drive has a major parking problem. They will come if it's good enough. Ours is a legitimate farm-to-table business, but we're far from being even the first in Ojai to promote it. A man named Bocali down the road has been making pizza with his own tomatoes for decades. And for that matter, as some of you from Southern California may know, Mary Knott's husband once had too many berries, so she made pies. And now Disney's rival, Knott's Berry Farm, offers an amusement called the Virtual Reality Showdown. At the Farmer and the Cook, I can assure you that reality itself is enough entertainment for anyone. We support our own nonprofit that helps plant trees and manages school gardens and measures progress. When searching for what to call the Ojai Center for Regenerative Agriculture, I borrowed the word regenerative from the Rodale Institute in 2002, and now we feel so overwhelmingly prescient about it, we can hardly control ourselves. Now that regenerative is the buzz term du jour, I hope we can define regenerative quickly before Monsanto sinks its hooks into it. We cooperate with our allies in Ojai, like Transition to Organic, who are also here today, Patty Pagling and her friends, Transition to Organic, trying to challenge officialdom to take a walk on the wild side. All of this sounds awfully enterprising now that I've said it, but it's what's happened in a life blessed by coincidence, lovely people, lived by someone who listens to trees. Thank you.